21 January 2025 meeting of the Annapolis Transportation Board. It's cold out there, and for once, I'm happy to be sitting here in a warm room with all of you. I don't expect this meeting to be long or very complicated. I think we've all been busy in the holiday season and may be a bit behind schedule, but let's get into the agenda. If anybody has any modifications to the agenda you would like to propose, let me know. I have one of my own, and that is to put back onto the agenda an item which was postponed from the last two meetings, an update by Beth Dolezal on the current status of the Annapolis Transit Development Plan. And then finally, the issue of the Hillman Garage and its operation, particularly with a view toward making it less complex, is a subject that I thought it would be useful to get a report from Jessica from our Office of Law at a future meeting. It's sufficiently complex that I don't think she or we are prepared to deal with it right now. But we have a general interest in knowing what the contract will allow the city to do in order to bring a better measure of customer friendliness to the operation of the garage without having to renegotiate the entire contract. But we will postpone that for a future date. So with your approval, I will proceed with the agenda. Any objections?
Jim.
Beth, are you saying something?
No, I'm talking to my husband.
Oh.
Sorry.
All right. We are called to order. I will announce from the screen who appears to be participating. Beth Dolezal, myself, Karma O'Neill from the City Council, Taylor Walters, Vince Harriman in a car, Ed Bergman, David DeQuincio, Jessica from the Office of Law, and Tara Ashmore. The first, that is the roll call, the agenda we have. The minutes of the last three meetings were distributed early this afternoon. Tara and I both apologize to you for their lateness, but you have them now, and I hope we can finalize them so that I can write this year's annual report. I'm on the hook to write, as all boards and commissions are, to write a report of the past year's activities. And the minutes are essential to completing that annual report. So
Kurt, I might interject one item. I
Mm-hmm.
did get John Gianetti's ward wrong. So there will be slight modification, not so much in substance, but on the attendance and allocation to wards. So I will fix that and send them out to you.
Great. Do check the spelling of his name. I think you have been leaving an N out of his name, but
I will check that. Thank you.
yes. So with that, and with Tara's suggestion that she'll make a small modification, could I get a vote on whether we can accept the minutes as submitted by Tara at this point for the last 3 months? I'll begin with discussion. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
All right.
Second that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I see a majority. Thank you very much. This being the medium it is, there is no public participation, which is a shame. City Council update. Karma, could you tell us what's going on from the city's point of view?
Thank you, Kurt. Welcome, everybody. And yes, it is cold, so I hope everyone's staying warm. Talking about staying warm, we have been hosting at the Stanton Center for the majority of the last 2 weeks since the first snowstorm, somewhere between 18 and 34 unhoused people overnight at the Stanton Center. This morning, those folks were actually taken by transit to Lighthouse Shelter to shelter in place until 7 o'clock tonight. So they're probably heading back. And if you all know Kevin Simmons of Office of Emergency Management, his motto is nobody dies of cold in the city of Annapolis. So we're paying close attention to those people that have been out on the streets and making sure that they have a warm bed to sleep in and a warm meal in their bellies. That's one update. The Public Works worked over the weekend to clear as many sidewalks as with excessive snow and ice on them prior to Sunday's storm. There's been quite a bit of publication about the link to report an issue. If you have an issue to report, whether it's a residence or business that has not been cleared or is particularly treacherous, please report that issue. They are averaging about 300 incidents reports a day since the Monday before last snowstorm. So if you don't hear back right away, it's just because they're trying to keep up. They're taking them in order as they've been received and going through those. City Council has requested what I like to call a hiccups and halos meeting to talk about what went on during the snowstorm. There were some residents that were upset because they didn't think that we were clearing fast enough. Others that felt like we were not focusing on sidewalks so that children could get to school in the safest way. If you have specifics, if you have photos, if you have things like that, please feel free to forward them to me or your ward alderperson, because we are taking that seriously. And we want to make sure that as we move forwards, we do better for storm management. As you all know, we don't get very many storms. Our 8.5, 9.5 inches on that Monday 2 weeks ago was the first big snowfall we've had in many, many years. So we learn, live and learn, and look, like I said, looking to improve moving forward. So please send me those comments and or your alderperson. The other things we are working on, the Transportation Committee of the City Council did meet in December. And we met with both parking contractors, both Metropolis, that's formerly SP Plus, and Premium. We did request of both of them data on users using the garage, the number of fines that have been given out in the garage, as well as any updates for software that they had available or would consider using to make the process easier and faster. As you know, SP Plus / Metropolis operates GOTS, Knighton, and Park Place garages. And those are all now gateless entry, but you go in and park, and when you leave, once you've established your account the very first time, every time after that, you don't really have to do anything. I don't know how many people have used it. If you've used one of those 3 garages, you get an email that says, hey, Karma, it looks like you're parking at GOTS Garage. I hope you enjoy your stay in Annapolis. And then when you leave, it says, thank you for parking at GOTS Garage. Your total is, you stayed here for 3.5 hours, and your total is whatever, $9. I forget what the hourly fee is, but it's a great system. There is a QR code system to get your residents 2 hour. If you have any issues with that, I would call the transportation office because they can walk you through it. Fairly simple, and they are moving to a system where hopefully you won't have to use the QR code for that 2 hour free every time you go in. They're looking to upgrade their system so that it will be now attached to your address. So when you go in, it recognizes that you're getting your 2 hours free. We are hoping for very much the same moving forward, or very similar moving forward. With Hillman, the problem is that the software that Metropolis has is proprietary, and Jessica could probably talk a lot more about that. But there's progress in the works there, and the city has made a couple of requests to the partnership, and we're just waiting on that. There's not really anything that we can do until we hear back from them. And we really hear back from them on their timeline, not on ours. So as much as I wanted that to be fixed and changed before the start of 2025, it looks like it's going to be a little bit longer. As you probably already know, they launched in August Annapolis Go, which is the on-demand transit, and they've seen increased ridership every single month of that. Marcus Moore had given us an update in December, and I believe that it is increased attendance 25%, 30%, and another 25% for September, October, and November. That was the latest data that they'd had at the time. People are using it. People are loving it. If I find, like, for instance, I live in Emerald Heights, and I asked them to put a stop at the corner of Bristol Drive and Cedar Park Road because it's sort of in the middle of our community. Those two, it's the purple line and the orange line that basically we're using as those mobile transits, the on-demand transit. Anywhere, if you go onto the bus schedule and anywhere that the purple and orange line go, you can get a ride either to or from any of those locations. It's best to look at the map. They pretty much cover Annapolis from Growls on Taylor Avenue down to, I'm going to say, Mills on Main Street because I actually took it from one place, that one to the other. And then it goes up West Street to Chinkapin and back around again. So this sort of 1/3 of Annapolis, basically. The hope is that in the coming months, we'll be able to expand that. There's been a lot of interest from Eastport, particularly people that want to go to either the Giants on Bay Ridge or Eastport Shopping Center, or someplace along there, or even to Pip Moyer. Right now, those are just standard bus routes, but we're hoping to make that into that micro-mobility option coming soon. The great thing is it's $2 one way. It's $1 if you're a senior or if you're a student. I've had dozens of seniors from Morris Bloom at the base of Clay Street that have used it, and instead of they were having to pay $6, $7, $8 one way to take either Uber or taxi. So this is actually changing their livelihoods because they can go to Growls, they can go to Walgreens, they can stop at the bagel shop, they can get a pizza for $1 one way if you're a senior, or $2 one way. And it's usually coming within 20 minutes of your calling. The average wait time, I think they said, was 16 minutes, but and the most time that people have waited is 23. So fairly convenient as long as you have a little pre-planning to try and get someplace. And I think that's all I have.
Great.
It's all this on my list anyway.
That's very nice. I'm glad to see the progress on the on-demand transit. One of the things that we have talked about in the past is the desirability of, and I don't think we have the data, or at least I haven't found it conveniently available, is, how many rides are we getting out of each bus route, out of each of the Annapolis Go things? Yeah, we're getting large growth rates when starting from zero, but what are the actual numbers? How do they compare? at some point, the city should be getting a very clear understanding of what the cost and what the relative efficiency of these various modes is. We're starting this thing off, is that correct, with grant money? The on-demand is being paid for this time around by grant money, is that correct?
No, it's actually because we're utilizing 2 of the regular fixed routes. It's falling into
Okay,
that
all right.
route.
All right, so it really is in the city's budget. Okay, great, thanks. I have an observation and a question, Karma. The observation is that the city pretty clearly prioritizes the car over pedestrians. As you go around town, you can see lots of sidewalks that are still iced and blocked. As I moved around within the past 3 days or so, I saw lots of sidewalks onto which vehicles clearing the roads had pushed snow, thereby blocking the sidewalks. So it's pretty clear that it's whoever was driving that machine not only accorded lower priority to the sidewalks, but they were actually destroying sidewalk utility in favor of cars. So when we see those things, I think, as you suggested, it would be good to report them so that we can get a fix. Then the second thing is just a question. Can you tell us, Karma, what the legal obligation is of people who own houses and businesses to keep the sidewalks in front of their places cleared? Is there a legal obligation?
There's actually code, and I can send you the actual code, but the sidewalk code basically says within,
Do you need help, Karma?
3
Yes,
hours.
please.
It's within 3 hours, or if
3
it happens
hours.
overnight, you have till 11 a.m.
Yep.
Thank you.
But that doesn't mean neighbors on either side of me abide.
Yeah.
I'm curious to
Those
know. Go ahead.
Those are folks that should also be reported. Not that I am all about, reporting your neighbors and telling on your neighbors. I would think that if you've asked them nicely, and they haven't, then use that form, and I can send that to you as well, because we don't have the chat function. Is that right?
We do not seem to have a
To report them, and they will receive a letter to be fined. So they're serious about that, and I say they're serious. The city is serious about, residents and business owners need to be clearing their sidewalks because it makes it safer for everybody else and their driveways. I was looking for the exact code, but I don't see it.
Karma. Now I
Yes.
haven't been out walking lately, but the office, and I think it's a law office that sits on the corner of Charles Street and Duke of Gloucester.
Uh-huh.
Well, I've lived here 35 years, and I'm not sure they have ever cleaned their sidewalk. And I have walked through there when it is so bad that you don't know if you're going to make it or not. I didn't go through with the snowstorm, so whether they've done it this time or not, I don't know, but it wouldn't hurt the city. I just never understood how it could be so close to City Hall and nobody noticed that these people never do any. They don't even put out sand. I mean, even if they put sand out, at least you'd have something under your feet, but they don't. But so maybe someone will look into them. Just walk up
Yeah.
the street, But the
If
other
you could
thing,
send me an exact address, I will report
I will.
them.
I will. So, but I do want to say that this last snowstorm, it felt like Annapolis was Annapolis again, because I have never seen anything as bad as the big snowstorm in Annapolis with all the years I've lived here. But they came down the street a day before with the liquid. And then the day that it was supposed to start, they came down with what looked like sand, but I never saw any sand on the street. So I'm not sure why they backed that big truck all the way down the street with what looked like sand. And then I never saw any sand on the street. So maybe I didn't maybe it was salt in there, not sand. But I'm going to assume they put something down because they backed all the way down the street.
Okay.
And I'll tell you myself, and I got a couple of other neighbors that were going to their cars. We stood out there and thanked them for coming up the street and, down the street and doing what they did because, they did. And it's the way it should be done. And it was nice to see them. And I meant to send them something in some email and I ended up not doing that. And I'm sorry I didn't because
Okay.
they
No
deserve to
worries.
be thanked. Yeah. So.
All right. Thank you, Karma. Next thing is the Transportation Department update. They are not here tonight, so we'll go on to the next
May I
item.
ask a
Kurt, I
question
think
for
Robert has a
comment?
Yes.
question.
Please do, Robert.
Yes, sidewalks. I noticed that during the snowstorms, both the two last snowstorms, that all the Airbnbs on my street, 5 of them, they never did anything with the sidewalks because they don't live here. That's the reason. So, I guess I could report them, but the thing is that that's a real issue. Another question I had was on the purple buses. Do the people on purple buses, do they have to pay?
No, the purple buses are free and it runs
Okay.
from Park Place
Yeah,
down
the
West Street, downtown and back
Yeah.
again in a continuous loop from
yes.
6
I
a.m. to
understand.
11
I just
p.m.
wanted to make it clear that they don't pay because the thing is that I've seen those buses many, many times going up and down, and there's very few people in them, maybe 1 or 0. And I have a feeling that the drivers are reporting how many people ride the bus, and they may be cooking the books because they want to keep their jobs.
That would be a question for Marcus, I believe. I'm going to go backtrack for a second though to your Airbnb complaint about them not doing sidewalks. Please report them because
will.
actually in the short-term rental legislation that we passed in last year in 24, one of the things that can keep somebody from renewing their license is 3 noted infractions. And if
Okay.
those are reported and we have letters noting that they had an infraction, we can take care of those.
Great, I will. Thank you very much.
But I'll ask Marcus about the data for the purple buses. I know that city staff use them in the morning to get to work and in the afternoon to leave work because most of city staff parks at Park Place that works in City Hall and on Green Street. So, and I've been on them several times where they've been fairly full. Tourists are using them in the summertime, definitely. I've seen lots of kids, lots of people coming from the hotel, the Hilton, and the Graduate to just want to get downtown quicker than walking. So, but I'll ask him for the data. And I think it looks like you're sharing your wine with me, so I'll take that.
Mhm.
Hey, Karma,
Any other
can I-
questions
I'm
before
sorry,
we move
Kurt,
on?
one more question for Karma.
Yes,
So
Tara.
Karma, one of the interesting things is we love that the city garages open up when there is an emergency, right? And they want
Yes.
the roads cleared. We were trying to understand the distinction between the first snowstorm and the second, and why there was not a willingness to open up the garages for the second, even though it wasn't clear. So is there a standard? Or is that up to the OEM? Just curious, because clearly we would all have thrown our cars in Hillman if we knew that it was free on the second instance, but clearly the OEM did not put out a press release allowing for that.
Right. It's actually Public Works that makes the decision. OEM was just being the basically project manager so
Thank
that
you.
there was one place that all the information was coming from. I will double check. I know that during the first snowstorm, they utilize about 130 people utilized the 4 garages, which is not
Yeah,
very
there isn't-
many.
Well, there isn't
considering-
enough outreach. So even as people were clearing their cars after the first storm, I was talking with them about the possibility and letting them know that it was available to them, is as long as it was declared an emergency. On the second
Right.
instance, because it happened to be on a weekend, I advise people to go park up at the Calvert Garage because it just happened to be the weekend and it was free.
Right, right. I'll ask though, when we do our wrap up meeting, I will actually ask about that because I didn't even think about it this second snowstorm about them not offering garages, and I don't know why that is.
Thank you. Just some feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was wishing that more people, I had urged them to put it out that it's not just emergency roadways, that everybody should, because there were streets like Revel Street that didn't get plowed for about 4 days because the plow couldn't fit down because there was cars on both sides. And I said, why don't you just tell everybody to park in the garage, and that way the streets will be clean.
Yeah, good idea.
I'll tell you, can I say something? Market Street, first of all, quite a few people went to the garage from Market Street, to include ourselves. And we always do. And also you can get a plow down Market Street with no problem. The bigger plows are a little bit more problem, but definitely the plows on the front of the pickup trucks and whatever go down Market with no problem. And they did not come down Market Street. And so by the time they finally came down Market Street, it was ice and whatever. And he was, digging up the road and doing whatever during that storm. And I'll tell you that I'm sitting here thinking, why move my car if they're not going to come and plow and utilize the fact that there's not cars on the street? If, so why move it? People were driving out with no problem. So it wasn't a situation where you couldn't get off the hill, or you couldn't get off. This is the lower end of Market, the water end of Market is where I imagine they did the other end. But in fact, I'll tell you something, Karma. I went out the second day because we've had all the complaints about the not doing Market Street, and I watched a plow back down Market till he came to the hill. So just past Shipwright Street, he put some sand out, and then he drove away. He did not come down Market Street.
Okay, could I move on from this subject? We've been on it. Beth, could you shift gears and tell us where you and the city are on the Annapolis Transit Development Plan?
We're nearing the end. Where we have done a lot of discussion of the current routes and how to better serve the community and how to better make transit for everyone. There is, as Karma said, there's a lot of discussion of microtransit and the on-demand transit and they're even discussing maybe going to a full system that way, although I don't know that they will. But there's also a lot of talk about areas of Annapolis or Annapolis County, but areas of importance that are not served by transit, such as the high school and the swim center and some of the government buildings over that way, and the motor vehicle and such and so on. So they're looking at creating either another route that will service them, or somehow expanding what's already there. One of the things, you learn a lot, but one of the things they're looking at is to make the routes straighter. Apparently, the more turns you make, the longer they are, the more costly they are. So they're looking at making the routes straighter and straighter and straighter. And so what they'll do is you may have the microtransit go into the areas off the route and bring people up to the fixed routes. So that's all in all, that's where it's still all ideas. And and I was just going through the notes that I have from yesterday that I got yesterday. And they have, by the way, they do have included in here a fare-free system, and whether we go to a fare-free system or not, the pros and cons of that. And so that's where we are. So it's still in its development stage.
Okay, any questions, remarks from the board? Next item of business is our annual tour of electing a chair and secretary. And I'd like to start with the secretary. Tara, thank you so much for doing a job that most people run from as fast as they can.
Yeah. So Kurt, may I suggest we defer this, because I do think you have brought some really engaged community members to the board, and they're not here this evening. And I think it would be unfair to nominate and discuss a chair without their participation, if I may.
Well, you are the higher among evils, having actually carried this burden yourself. So I'm happy to defer to your suggestion.
And I don't even mean on secretary, but I even mean on chair. I mean, there are some really dynamic people that have joined this board that have some high commitments. And I mean, I would even step up to chair given their engagement. It's sort of a new face. So I'd be happy to take chair or vice chair. I'd be happy to continue as secretary, but I don't feel we should discuss this without their participation. They clearly are a dynamic group.
Yeah,
I don't mean to derail you, but to be fair, they are engaged.
yes, and I wish the other members were present here. I think the rule actually is we're supposed to do this at our first meeting of the year. That's what the city code says, if I remember
Okay, well then I'll
correctly.
just drop off and you don't have a quorum and you can't. I mean, we
I
can
like
work
that.
this.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the last time we went through this, I've been earnestly hoping for a mutiny, but it hasn't
I'll give you the
appeared yet. But and I'm willing to. I have a suggestion, by the way, unless others have another point, and that is that we provisionally continue for 1 month with a view with the present elected president, I'm sorry, chairman and secretary, and that we revisit this for the balance of the year at our next meeting.
I believe that's a motion and I will second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of this compromise approach?
Aye.
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 I see a majority.
Sorry.
Good. And since there has been some change since we did the roll call, let me just repeat again those people who are present, who are members of the board. Taylor Waters, Kurt Riegel, Beth Dolezal, David DeQuincio, Vince Harriman, Robert Bergman, and Tara Ashmore.
Edward Bergman and Tara. Yep.
I'm
Captured.
sorry.
Captured.
ahead.
No change. Thank
Okay.
you.
I think
Tara Waters had her hand up. You wanted to say something?
She's
She doesn't have
captured, Beth. She's captured as.
I know I was voting. Yeah, I
Bob-
was voting.
Oh, is that what that was? Okay.
Bob Madden was on here earlier, was he not? Wait a
Who?
minute. Bob Madden.
Oh, yeah,
No,
Bob Madden
Not
was
seen him
on,
tonight.
Yeah,
but I don't know where he is now.
but he's gone now. Okay,
Mr. Chair, he is in as a role as an attendee, but he is.
okay. He's dropped off.
Well,
All right,
I'm
finally,
sorry, can we clarify, is he now a member of the committee, of the board, or is he just observing?
Well, let me tell you what the situation is. This is
Okay.
a sore point for quite a long time. And Ed, you might, if you have anything to say on this point, please do. But for quite a long time, I think he's cleared all of the hurdles except for the mayor's swearing in. And the mayor swearing in for this board at least has turned out to be a significant time delay for reasons that don't seem particularly compelling. And so after our discussion in a prior meeting, I have suggested to the mayor that they change their process a little bit, that at the same time the city council finally confirms members of boards and commissions that they do the swearing in the chamber on the spot. So the whole thing is over for all members within 3 minutes. That would for us have avoided months of delay. And so the mayor is considering that, and we'll see what happens.
Sounds logical to me.
You know, it's a kind of a drain on the mayor's time too. He's got to do this one by one for all of the boards and commissions, and it's quite a heavy load for not much output, in my opinion. So we'll see where that goes. And the answer to the question about Madden, frankly, I don't know whether he's had his final swearing in or not, but he's passed the first 2 hurdles, which are endorsement by the Transportation Committee and ratification by the board, by the city council at large. It's only the mayor's swearing in, I think. We're at that point in the agenda where we go round robin. This is your chance to introduce items of new business or to make observations of any kind relating to city transportation. Forrest Landa is not here. John Giannetti is not here. David DeQuinzio?
Good evening, everyone. As you probably can guess, I've been focusing on trying to figure out what the change of administration means for transportation issues going forward. And in some corners, there is some level of despair, but in others, there's a sense that let's not panic, and that effective advocacy may still carry the day in some places and situations.
Interesting observation. I like the optimism. Pete Buttigieg is probably the best Secretary of Transportation I've ever seen in operation. So,
yeah, I definitely agree. But he's, you know, I think what he's accomplished will take a while for people to really appreciate. But particularly in the case of passenger rail, what the passenger rail advocacy community has been focused on for many years now is making the case to the conservative side and identifying allies within the conservative world. And so, for example, the members of the Senate who represent, for example, North Dakota and Montana are the passenger rail group in general, including Rail Passenger Association, but others as well, have been courting those folks and making some real inroads there. So we have support there among the senators of those states. So efforts to eliminate or seriously defund Amtrak will run into opposition from those senators. So that's one just, that's just one data point, but also there are red state mayors who are who have for years been quietly working on active modes and things. So, for example, there are transit options now in, of all places, Oklahoma City that many thought were not possible. And so, so the idea that the new administration will, just be able to blow all of that away, there will be people that on the conservative side who rise up and say, hey, wait a minute, yeah, we may need to reduce government spending, but these investments are generating real economic benefits in our red part of the country. So also in a lot of red states, the decline of intercity bus travel options has been noted. So it may not be as cut and dried a picture as you might assume.
Interesting observation about support from red states. I wouldn't have thought that would be the case necessarily, but it's a good thing. The downside is that in Annapolis, we may be able to get the rail to Missoula, if not to Baltimore and Washington. So,
Kurt,
Yeah,
if I
that's a
may,
heavier lift. Yeah.
Yes.
right.
Representing Amtrak will always state, and it's not my role here, but Amtrak will always state that we have bipartisan support for the National Rail Network.
Yeah,
It's never
and much more so than in prior years.
It's never been in doubt. It's never been
Yeah,
in doubt.
yeah,
Let's
and
just move on.
a
Can
big
we move
reason
on?
for that, is that conservatives of prior years lost one of their main pillars of their argument against it, which was, roads pay for themselves. That stopped being true. That was never true. But a big dent in that argument occurred with the Highway Trust Fund going negative starting in 2005, and Congress basically bailing it out each year. This is never covered in the mainstream media, mainly because particularly cable TV news is highly dependent on car manufacturer advertising revenue, and they are very nervous about upsetting those companies and losing that revenue stream. So you don't see anybody on cable TV talking about driving as being subsidized, even though in the true definition of the word, it's highly subsidized. But but without that argument that there's not a lot of that roads pay for themselves, I think it's better understood now that all forms of transportation are subsidized, and people are starting to understand, just beginning to get the idea that one mode may need operating support from the public sector, and another mode may need capital support for its infrastructure from the public sector. So what's the difference? Why is operating support so horrible, but then shoveling money into the infrastructure side for other modes from the public trough is okay? That a subsidy is a subsidy, whether it goes into operations support or infrastructure or capital support, it's still a subsidy. And I think that's one of the key things that has led to this.
Well, this is a universal debate, right? I mean, it doesn't just apply to infrastructure, it applies to all non-for-profits, right? People want their name on the big building, but they're not going to give the money that supports that building over time. I mean, it is a universal problem. I'll give you money to put that rail in. I'm not going to give you money to operate that rail over time.
Yeah, universities have the same problem. There are lots of buildings and
Indeed.
very few students and professors supported in that way.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Dave. Vince Harriman, you're driving. Can you, whoops, did Vince drop off? He was here just a moment ago. I guess he did drop off. Hugh Hayes is not here. Ed Bergman?
Yes, I think that Robert and I are still in the same situation. I have
Both of
just
you.
faked it. I have not been sworn in by the mayor or anyone else. This has been 2 years now. I don't know what that means, whether we've had we've lacked quorums in certain situations, or what my position should be. Should I go to the mayor and ask to be sworn in? What is the
Yes.
procedure here?
The answer is yes. I have asked several times, and I gather you have too, but please continue to beat the drums. This is a bureaucratic thing that may have simply fallen through the cracks, inattention. But if we make
I've
a little
asked the
noise-
mayor, I've asked the mayor directly. I'm still waiting. It's going to be a year, May for me. I'm still not approved for the transportation board. I went to Hillary, and Hillary said that there's paperwork on her desk, and when it surfaces, I'd be in the queue. That was November 6th. So I guess the paperwork is still on her desk. Who knows? I really like to be able to join the transportation board and make some comments, but I'm not really on the board.
Thanks. I had a conversation with Kate, who is Gavin's, gosh, what is it, chief of staff or
I think he's
Anyway.
chief of staff.
yeah, she sits with the mayor, and she pledged to me that she would have this discussion again with him. We should really knock this off in city council meeting when you are approved. There's no reason to wait for months and months for a very simple bureaucratic step. But thank you for telling us what your status is.
Well, I think maybe Robert and I should go together.
Do, please.
Maybe
That would-
that's- put some pressure on.
Yeah,
Good.
strength in numbers.
All right. Zoe is not here. She could not be here tonight. Tara? Anything else?
No, my only comment might be that there are times when people that participate in our meetings reference past studies, and they're easily Googled, and I wonder if we shouldn't just come up with some sort of reference for all of our future participants on this board, for all of those objects, right?
Mhm.
The bike study, the most recent transportation study, the county study, etc. Maybe a sort of an appendix of items that would be helpful for people to study and understand, to be current rather than question, why haven't I seen? Why haven't I seen? So I might take a stab at that, but I would really need some help. But I think it would be applicable, and I think it would really give people a starting point when they join the board on what has been studied and what they can research.
What a great idea. I think that's wonderful. I don't think we have any control ourselves over the city's website, but we could post these anywhere and refer to them in the minutes that are kept every week, a repository of useful reference materials like the city plans and the
Correct.
recommendations of the board and ordinances which have been passed that are relevant. A compendium of relevant items. Is that what you had in mind?
Indeed, you put it so much nicer than I did.
Well, I think that's wonderful. Can you?
So I'll take a stab, but people need to find and links and send them to me. I also think it's interesting the extent to which some of the new members have websites where like, oh, was it Landa who had the rail history? Oh my God, I'm trying to remember from December what he referenced. Anyway, yes. So it could be quite extensive, and it could include websites that just sort of referencing interesting historic documents that we have about rail or other modes of transportation in Annapolis.
Wonderful. You have our enthusiastic endorsement.
Thank you.
All right. Bob Madden is last on the list here. Have you already spoken? What you needed to say? You're muted.
Yes, I've kind of covered everything. The other idea that I was hoping that Zoe Johnson would be here on this particular meeting, because they're starting to work on a wall on taking it down, and that's been a real issue with the residents. As our alderman said, if you start the wall without having another meeting with the residents are going to chain themselves to the wall. He was not kidding. He said he would make sure that it doesn't start until we have at least some more information coming from the Navy of what they're going to do. We're going to see 2 years in my area here where parking and traffic is going to be really changed greatly. We don't see any information from Hillary, who seems to be now the parking guru for the city of Annapolis. But we're up in the air. I'm meeting with Harry tomorrow at one of his annual coffee dates, and I'll find out more information, and I can email everybody if you'd like.
Great. Thanks for keeping us in touch on that. As a personal matter, I swim every day at the Navy pool, and I go down the street where that wall is under construction. And I note the frustration on drivers' faces as they're jammed there. Doesn't bother me because I go by on the sidewalk on a bicycle.
Well, the other issue, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the other issue is the fact that we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and premium parking is supposed to enforce all of these issues on the streets for parking. We don't see any enforcement at all, and we had a long meeting with the Navy, and more than 70% of that meeting was complaints about premium parking and their enforcement.
Okay, well, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes the meeting, and it was longer than I thought it was going to be. You're all overflowing with good ideas. Thanks so much, and we will convene again next month, I guess. Any final comments by anybody? If not, we'll sign off. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Bye.